everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my April wrap up, and in the month of April I did only read 4 books, so I don't have too much to talk about this month. It was one of my lower reading months. There was just a lot of life stuff that was happening, and that's okay. That's okay. Some months we just can't read as much as previous months, and that's totally fine. But the quality of my reading was fantastic this month. I really enjoyed everything that I did read. So I'm really excited to chat with you guys about these 4 books. So I'm gonna go just kind of in chronological order of what I read first to last. So the first book, I actually listened to this one on audio, and I highly recommend the audiobook if you've been wanting to check this one out and if you can access the audiobook. And that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is everywhere right now on Booktube. I feel like everyone has been reading this book and loving it, and I knew I would love it. From everybody's recommendations and from everybody's description of this book, I knew I would love this one. It sounded like an adorable hug of a book, and that's exactly what it was. It was the most precious book I've ever read. I knew I would love it. I did. It's definitely probably going to go down as an all-time favorite for me. It was precious. It was everything I was expecting and more. If you aren't familiar with this book, we follow a social worker who is assigned to this home for children that are magical in certain ways. These are not ordinary children. They all have kind of different abilities or conditions about them. And when he does meet this group of kids, he kind of goes on this journey of self-discovery, and it's just fantastic. The cast of characters in this book was so precious. Everybody talks about Chauncey. I think my favorite was Lucy. I loved Lucy so much. The kids in this book just made it so incredible, and it was so heartwarming. Every time I listened to it, I was in a good mood. It just put a smile on my face the whole time through, and it does even tackle some really sweet themes of like just accepting yourself, accepting others around you, not judging others around you. You never know what someone's going through. Just adorable. And I think that this is a book that any age can enjoy. I know that some people have said it's more middle grade. I think that this is an adult book technically, but I can totally see any age enjoying this book because of just how sweet all of the characters are. The messages in this book, it was just precious. I mean, I don't know how much more I can add that hasn't already been said about this book over and over again. It is so good. What I will say is there really isn't a very solid plot in this book. The plot is pretty much just following these characters around as they discover kind of who they are and how to accept themselves. And so if you are a plot-driven reader, I don't know how much you'll love this, but if you are a character-driven reader and you just like following characters through their day-to-day as they figure out themselves, then I think you would really enjoy this. It's so cute. It's so cute. I want to reread it already because I miss the kids so much. So I knew I would love it. I did. This is a new all-time favorite for sure. The next book I read was actually a reread, and that was Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. So if you didn't know, Jashana, Liene from Liene's Library, and I were doing a read-along of all of the Grisha books in preparation for the Shadow and Bone Netflix series dropping last month. So we did a live show for this discussing our thoughts, and I will link that live show down below. It was on my channel this time for the 3rd book, and then if you want to see the first 2 live shows for the first 2 books in the trilogy, I will link those as well. This was so much fun rereading this series, especially with Jashana and Liene. I will say, I think I remember this one being my favorite from the first time I read it, like 6 years ago, but I think that this one might have been my least favorite this time. And that's really interesting because I'm shocked that Siege and Storm took the spot, but the ending of this one just felt really rushed for some reason this time around. Like the big epic battle at the end ended up not being that big or epic. And there were just some like logical things that I just couldn't wrap my head around. However, I will say that the characters in this book were fantastic. I remember that being one of my favorite parts of this whole universe. The whole Grishaverse in general is just the characters that are living in it, and I love them. I love Liene. I think you can really see her growth from book 1 to this book. She grew a ton as a character, at least in my opinion, and I loved seeing her kind of come into her own by the end of this. Even Mal, who I wasn't a huge fan of from the first 2 books, in this book he was definitely much better than he had been in previous books. I really liked his conclusion as a character as well. I thought the character arcs for those that we had followed from book 1 to this book were really well done, and I just had fun. I had so much fun being back in this world with these characters and with this magic, and I can't help but love this series. So even though it may not be perfect, even though it may be pretty tropey and read a little bit more young, I still had fun with it. I flew through these books so quickly. They're such easy reads for me, and I know that I'll just always be happy to revisit the Grisha world over and over again in the future, because I love it. So I overall still loved this book, even though it was probably my least favorite this time around. It was still such a blast. I realized I forgot my microphone earlier, so hopefully my sound is better now. Sorry about that. My brain is a little fuzzy. So talking about the next book that I read, and that was Kingdom of Souls by Rena Barron. This was Elle and I's buddy read for the month of April, and I ended up really enjoying this one. This was very good for me, and I'm definitely planning on continuing on with the series. So if you don't know what Kingdom of Souls is about, it's about this girl named Ara who is born into this family of very powerful witch doctors. And when you're a witch doctor, you have powers that manifest in you when you're a kid or a teenager. They kind of manifest in different ways in you, and Ara is expecting magic to manifest in her, given her family, but unfortunately she's kind of now past the age where magic could possibly manifest, and so she's now having to come to the realization that she's just going to have to accept that she's never going to have magic of her own. But then we get introduced to this plot line where there's this child snatcher who is kidnapping children in her village. And so when one of her friends gets kidnapped, she has to make a deal and trade something pretty valuable in exchange for getting magic for the purpose of finding out where her friend is and how she can save him. But when she does find out what happened to him, she is launched on this bigger journey that I was not expecting to go on in this book, and oh my goodness, this book is filled with twists and turns and is dark and gritty and has family drama and is just wild. This book goes in so many different directions, but for me it worked like in the best way possible, and it could have not worked, like, because this book definitely starts off in a place and ends in a very different place, and when you have that many changes in direction in plot, I think that that's sometimes hard to pull off, but I loved it in this book. I thought it was really good. We kept ending different parts of the book and it would be like twist after twist, like reveal after reveal, like, whoa, what is happening? I really enjoyed it. It was much darker than I thought it was going to be. Really enjoyed the main character of Ara. I thought she was fantastic. And then there's also a romance in this book that's probably one of my favorite romances in a YA fantasy that I've read in a while, because it was very much a slow burn romance. It was not insta love. There was like a childhood friends to lovers sort of trope in this, and it was just really sweet, and I really liked how it was done. And then the ending was wild. We get a reveal at the end that I was literally, like, my mouth was hanging open. and it made me so excited for the next book. I don't know where this is going, but I am like so here for it. It was like a roller coaster ride of different plot lines and twists, and it was just wild. So if you haven't read this one and witchy dark fantasy sounds like something you would enjoy, I highly recommend. I'm super excited for the next book in this series. And then the last book that I read, technically, I finished this book in May, but I did read the majority of it in April, so I'm gonna count it for April. I'm cheating a little bit, but that was The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington, which was the Shelf Space Book Club pick for the month of April. We do have our live show. I think when this video goes up, it will be tomorrow at noon Central. So if you want to join, I will have Jade from Bedtime Bookworm on my channel talking about our thoughts on the first book in the Lycanius trilogy. And overall, I had a lot of fun with this. This was very good. I will say the magic system in this book is really cool, but it's really confusing. It's one of those books that has such an expansive plot that it's hard to try to sum up to you what this is really about. We are basically following three main characters who are three friends, and one of our main characters at the very beginning of the book, he kind of realizes he has these magical abilities that make him an outcast in this world, and so he is tasked with something that's very mysterious, and he's kind of put on this journey and he's not sure why, and we have another character who joins him for this journey, and this kind of leads them to find out things about their world that they didn't know before. There's very much a lot of mystery in this book around how the magic works and who the real enemy of this world is, and it's really complicated, but I was here for it. It's definitely a book where most of the time, if you had asked me like specifics of what was going on, I probably couldn't tell you, but I really enjoyed myself anyway. Like, it was one of those that you're confused. Like, you're confused with exactly how the magic works, exactly who the enemy is, like what in the world's going on, but you're like okay with it because you know that there's gonna be explanations later on. So I think that this is definitely like the first book in a series. Like, it does not wrap up everything in a pretty little bow by the end. Like, there's definitely still a lot of outstanding answers that we need, but I really liked it. I really liked the journey with these characters. The characters themselves, I think, were probably not the strongest part of this book. I definitely think more of the mystery, world building, and just the plot in general was definitely like the strong part of this book. So if you are a character-driven reader, I don't know how much you'll love this, but for me, who likes a kind of a good balance between plot and character, I found myself really enjoying it. And I liked some of the characters quite a bit. So overall, I'll definitely be continuing with this series. And I know that there's a lot of comparisons for Wheel of Time with this series. Like, if you like Wheel of Time, you'll like this series. And I think maybe that would be the case, but I didn't particularly like Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, so I was a little hesitant going into this one, knowing that there's so many comparisons to Wheel of Time. I did not find the writing nearly as dense as Wheel of Time in this book, and I think that that's why it just connected so much more to me. So if you have been hesitating on picking this one up because of those comparisons, then I would say give it a shot and see if it's for you, because I found the writing much easier to get through in this book than Eye of the World. So I'm excited to chat more about this book and talk more spoilers in the live show tomorrow. So if you want to join that, I will link it down below. Overall, Very good, very excited to continue. There's definitely some flaws that I'm sure we'll get into on the live show, like just how confusing it was, but I was still here for it and still had a really good time. Those were the 4 books that I read in the month of April. What was your favorite read in the month of April? And did you see any that I read that you've also read, and what did you think of them? I love to chat with you guys in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!